This is the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, episode number 18.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. In today's episode, I interview Hal Gordon, the chair of the Northwest Fly Tyer and Fly Fishing Expo. We get into how the expo has become the largest tying event in the West and discuss some fly tying tips and reasons why you should attend. We also cover a bunch of other tying events around the country, talk steelhead fishing on the Trask River, and how to catch cutthroat in frog water. Don't miss this one, as Hal shares a great tip and resource for finding hard-to-find materials. Without further ado, here's Hal Gordon. How's it going, Hal?
Pretty good, Dave.
Good to have you on here. This is a pretty timely interview because there's a big event coming up here, the Northwest Fly Tyer and Fly Fishing Expo isn't too far away. So I wanted to touch base with you on that and talk a little bit about that and some steelhead fishing, if that sounds good.
You bet.
Cool. So, maybe you can start us off and tell us a little bit about how, just your story and how you got into fly fishing. And it sounds like you do some steelhead fishing and fly tying. We were talking a little bit before here that you tie quite a few flies every day. So sounds like you've got a good passion for it.
Yeah, I really enjoy the hobby and the sport. I grew up in the Intermountain West, fishing the Blue River and trout streams around Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. And so I learned to fish there. I started young. I fished mostly with my mother. She would take me out as a kid and we'd fish for the day and come home. And my dad was from the city. My mother was from the ranch. And so we spent a lot of time on the water. Started tying flies when I was 10 or 12 years old. And my mother lined me up with her auto mechanic, and she asked the auto mechanic if I could sell flies out of his shop. His shop was on the way to Strawberry Reservoir in Utah, and so I made a little box and started selling flies at about age 13, and felt pretty good about that. And then after graduate school, we moved from New Mexico to Oregon about 30 years ago, and that's when I was introduced to steelhead. And my very first steelheading trip on the Wilson River, I caught my first steelhead, the first trip out, the first hour on the water, and that
wow.
was just fascinated with that. And I was hooked after that, and been chasing steelhead ever since. I consider myself mostly a trout person. I enjoy trout because they're there. They're resident fish. You know where to look for them. They're there pretty much the year round. Steelhead took some getting used to. I had to figure out when the runs were, how the water type would be, what the rainfall would be, and so it takes a lot more homework to be a good steelhead fisherman. And then I chase all fish with flies. I love to swing flies. I'll nymph a lot, and just been enjoying it for pretty much my whole life.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man. For fish within your first hour, that's pretty awesome. That's how was the. Do you remember that one like it was yesterday?
I do. It was the first part of December, and we were floating down through Mills Bridge, right below Mills Bridge.
Yep.
And I cast right to the north bank through a deep channel that exist anymore. It's all filled in with sediment now after the 96 floods, but cast into the channel, and my buddy who used to guide out of the guide shop, he was just a friend of mine, so we'd fish regularly, but hooked a fish, and I say, Bill, I've got one. He says, no, you don't. It's a snag. Bill, it's a fish. And he says, okay. He pulled over. The fish jumped about 6 times.
Nice.
I had no idea what I was doing. I believe my tippet, I think I had 6-pound tippet on because I'd been it was a 7-weight fly rod I'd been fishing for trout. I didn't even think to change it to a heavier tippet for steelhead. And so it took about 20 minutes to land the fish, and it was about a 7-pound hatchery male steelhead. And Bill got it in the net, and we took pictures, and I couldn't have been more excited in my life. That was the biggest trout I'd ever caught. Even though it's a steelhead, I still considered it a trout. But yeah. And every time I cross Mills Bridge now, I think about that. And it was good. That's the way to start steelhead fishing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's a big part of it. Right away, you learned, a fly that caught a fish, a spot, and kind of in the first hour, that's definitely the way to start. I've got some bunch of other questions here as far as steelhead fishing, but I'd love to get into a little more on the Fly Tyer Expo. And just hear about that whole story, because I think it's interesting how big it's gotten. And so maybe you can tell us just a little bit about the history of how this thing got started. I'm not even sure if you were there at the beginning or how it all came to be, the biggest fly tying expo in the West, right?
Yeah. It started back in 1987, I believe, in Eugene, Oregon. So this will be our 30... Well, you do the math, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm not good at math. You know what? If I had John Shewey was on the show in what was it? Episode 16, and he mentioned that he's been doing it. Over 30 years. So I guess you can go take a look at that one and hear him talk about it. But so it's been a while either way, right?
Yep. Yeah, John was one of the founders, I believe, but it started in Eugene in about 1987, and it started in Eugene because that's where the Federation of Fly Fishers began in Eugene also. And a group of guys got together and decided to demonstrate their fly tying skills. And it started out as a Federation of Fly Tyers, Federation of Fly Fishers group. Just last year, the name was changed from Federation of Fly Fishers to Fly Fishers International.
Oh, that's right.
So the name has changed. It started out in the pavilion down at the fairgrounds in Eugene, very small group. The building could hold, maybe 200 people. It was a little bit dark and damp down there. It's been held in March every year. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, they moved it up to Albany, where we had more room. Down in Eugene, there was probably 50 tyers that tied all day. When we moved to Albany, we were able to have up to 200 tyers. And the last few years, we've had vendors and tyers. We've had some nonprofit fishery-related groups come in. We've got 2 full days, 9 a.m. till 5, Friday and Saturday. And I'm the fly tyer chair there, so my responsibility is to line up tyers to tie in 2.5-hour shifts, and there's 3 shifts a day. And so I have a database of about 600 tyers from across the country, and we have had tyers come from Japan and from Europe also. And so out of our database, we get about 200 tyers a year. And the tire tables go pretty quick. We have quite a demand, and a lot of people want to tie. We actually don't have enough tables for everyone that does want to tie. And we get couldn't tell you the attendance, but I'd say maybe 1,500, 2,000 people show up for the event, and it's kind of mecca for a fly tyer because you can come and see some of the best fly tying talent in the world there. They'll be tying saltwater flies, salmon, steelhead, trout, bass, muskie, anything that you can catch on a fly. You can go find a fly tyer there to tie patterns that you might be interested in.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
so
it's a fun event. It's a family reunion for fly tyers is what it is. I've seen some people I've been seeing there for 30 years, and I've not been on the expo board. I've been on the expo board the past 10 years or so, but I've attended every event for over 30 years.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it's basically bringing together, all these fly tyers. Like talking to John Shewey when, in that episode, he mentioned that, it's just, you're kind of coming back. He hasn't missed a single show or whatever. And you're getting together with your old friends. But it's also getting out to actually people that are interested in learning. Is that kind of your target audience? Who do you think out of those, few thousand people coming, what is their, who are those people? Are they beginners? Are they experienced? Just kind of everybody?
I think it's all different skills come, but I think the majority of people are the intermediate tyers that want to learn new skills. The guy that ties a dozen or two flies a year just for their own personal use and fishing trips. Mm-hmm. It's people that have some free time on their hands that want to learn a new hobby, learn a new skill. And the joke at the expo is that all the retirees come on Friday because it's less crowded and they got Fridays off. Then the working folk with kids, they come on Saturday.
Gotcha.
And we've got quite a few youth. We have tables for youth to set up and actually tie. I have this year, we have a dozen tyers at the tables that are teenagers. We have two young girls that are fantastic. They're 12 and 13 years old. They've tied the last 2 or 3 years. And so when you show up, you can pick your skill level. If you want to learn basic beginner flies, there's 24 tyers for you. If you want to do advanced Atlantic salmon patterns with married wings, fancy flies, we've got another 24 for you. But we have all skill levels, and the tables are all set up where you just wander around, and when a fly catches your eye, you sit down in front of the tyer and they'll show you all the techniques and methods and answer all your questions.
Yeah, that's cool. So you have a good range of tyers from, I guess basic up to, I just think of my skill level, I've been tying my whole life, but I'm not, one to get up on the, tie a beautiful Atlantic salmon fly. I'm kind of a little more basic. So am I going to fit in there nicely this year? I guess there'll be people that'll want to see some of that, a good range of stuff, right?
Yeah. You'll learn some new tricks and techniques. Maybe you've been tying a hair wing on a certain way for years and years. Maybe it slips. When you come into the expo, you can ask you a few questions. They'll show you how to keep that hair intact, have the fly fish longer, maybe fish at a different method or different angle. And so you learn all those things. And the neat thing is all of our tyers are very enthusiastic about sharing their knowledge and skills with other people. We want people. We focus on tyers that are teachers, that are personable, and you can sit down and spend an hour. Sometimes you can't get away from them. They'll want to talk to you longer than you have time, but you'll definitely learn things that we can watch videos and YouTube of fly tying, but you don't get to ask questions there. Here at the expo, you can sit down and actually have a long conversation about how to do a fly and how to fish it, where to go. There's just a wealth of information there from all over the state, all over the country. Yeah.
No, it sounds awesome. It's just a perfect forum for teaching, and I'm definitely excited about chatting with people. And I hope to do a little documenting, the show this year, and maybe, do a little summary of, kind of some of the people that I talked to. And, I'm not sure if this show will be published by the time, the show comes along, but this is actually going to be the show that we're doing here will be at wetflyswing.com/18. So this is the 18th episode I've done. So I'll post that. But yeah, this is I mean, I'm really excited about just kind of doing like you're saying, chatting with people and kind of getting to know some new skills, and that's really cool. So you have sessions as well where people can learn and actually go into specific types of tying, not just folks that are out there on the general floor.
Yeah, we have, like I say, 200 tyers that you can sit down and watch. Then we have special classes. These classes, we charge a fee. The fee might be $5 to $20, but here you get to get a class from a well-known tyer who maybe there's not enough room to. Each table might sit 3 people on the tying floor, but if you want to, a little bit more personal touch, you can take a class, and the class might have 10 people in it, but at least all 10 people will get to talk with the instructor without having to crowd around a very small table. It'll be more open. The classes run from 2 to 3 hours, and the classes are focused on a particular pattern or style or fishing method. This year, I believe we have about a dozen classes that people can take. Some focus on lake fishing, some on streams, some on steelhead. I think there's one on saltwater this year, but
cool.
Yeah, those are all advertised on our website.
Great. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Good stuff. So what, about the show, what gets you excited about it every year? What's the biggest thing that kind of keeps you going? It must be a lot of work, as the chair. How do you keep going strong all these years?
It takes me about 200 hours a year to volunteer time. What keeps me going is I get to see, like I say, some of the best tyers in the world, become friends with them. When you see them year to year, you start getting invitations to go fish and go tie with them and go to other fly tying events. In fact, just this last year, I got to know a great tyer from Southern California, and he said, Hal, how would you like to go catch some golden trout in the high Sierras? And I said,
cool.
That would be wonderful. He said, come on down, I'll take care of you. And
nice.
So that's how we fly tyers are. We get to know each other and develop friendships, and it's very rewarding to work with people when you can develop those relationships.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a nice, cool. Well, that's basically what it all comes down to, right? It's like building these relationships and connecting with people, and that sounds like that's basically a big part of what this forum is about. So that's cool. Yeah. So do you want to, this year and past years, who are some of the big name tyers that people may have heard about that are coming, or maybe this year or in past years? Or do you know of any off the top of your head who you might call? So I don't know how you talk about the top tyers. I know there's a few names I've seen this year.
I tell you, I need to be real careful here, Dave.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We don't want to call it. Yeah. I hear you.
Every one of our tyers is a top tyer. And
yeah.
So, but I can describe what they do. We have several members of a group from Seattle. It's the Atlantic Salmon Fly Tying Guild up there. Excellent tyers. They meet as a club once a month in the Seattle area and tie. That's a great group to meet at the expo because they can help you find some of the exotic fly tying materials that you might not be able to find in other places. They've got connections to zoos and private
nice
people that raise birds. So Atlantic Salmon are covered there. We have one tyer that does realistic. Actually, we have several tyers that do realistic flies. If you want to see a black widow spider
nice.
Tied as a fly, or a little mosquito that looks just like the real bug. One of them does a pterodactyl and some dinosaurs, which is quite interesting. So we've got realistic tyers. Then we just have your basic run-of-the-mill tyer that ties flies that will catch fish.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that. We have quite a few women tyers are coming to tie for us. And so ladies shouldn't be shy of coming to the expo. There we've got a dozen or two lady tyers that are just excellent. We've got young kids, and then we've got, I think, one or two tyers that are pushing 90. And like I said, we got our youngest tyer, I think, is one of the young lady's, I think she's 11 or 12 years old. So, but I don't want to mention any names.
No, it's fine.
We're all good. We're all good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And actually, that was a great tip on the talking about the exotic materials and stuff. I'll, as I noted at wetflyswing.com/18, I'll have the show notes there, and I'll provide links to the groups you mentioned here in this episode, so people can connect with that. That's definitely going to be a great resource. So I'm hoping, when I post this, people can actually just go to the website and get all these links we're talking about today. So how do you get into, it's fine, not calling out names or whatever, but how do you, do you choose specific? I think actually I talked to one of the tyers that's going to be at the show who is going to be a guest on my show in a couple months. And he was saying, I thought that he maybe was, called by you guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you actually call big time tyers or do you just wait for people to come to you?
We're 100% word of mouth. As people see our event, they get interested. I try to get them to come attend the event at least once before they actually tie. There's an application that you fill out to tie every year, and I choose most of my tyers based on recommendations for others. So if someone wants to tie, I'll ask them for references, someone that can vouch for their skills and abilities. And the other thing is we're linked to all the fly fishing clubs in Oregon, California, and Washington. And so each club, we ask for volunteers to help run the expo. And so through volunteering through the clubs, the clubs will recommend their best tyers. And so out of a dozen or so clubs in Oregon, each club each year recommends their best tyers to come. And then as a tyer attends the event, they get really excited, and then they approach me and say, "Hey, I need an invitation." And so we've never really had a lack of tyers, and most years we have an over demand of tyers. And, but we have a lot of interest, and being a 30-year event too, we're well known.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I think about the way on my show here, how I find guests. A lot of it comes from people, just people I know or hear about. But one way I find new guests is at the end of each call. I usually ask my guest if he knows, a couple people that, would be interested in doing a similar, call like we had. So I kind of build on, word of mouth, basically hearing from, the people I'm talking to and who they think would also love this sort of conversation. So, that's something that works pretty well for me, but it sounds like, you guys don't have a problem finding great. Obviously you can look at the list, go to the website and see the list of tyers you have there and see that. So maybe we can get into a couple. This is kind of a hard one. It's not always an easy one when you talk about, fly tying tips, but you tied a lot of flies. Do you have, maybe for that beginner, maybe it's intermediate fly tyer, a tip that can help them tie better flies? Anything come to your mind?
Sure. I think the best tip is get involved with one of the fly clubs. They're in most of the major cities in the Western United States. Get to know people. And I think the way I started out was I tied flies because I was too cheap to buy them. I couldn't afford flies. Oh, yeah. So I started tying, and I only tied flies that I fished and caught fish. And then it went from a utility of I need flies to an art form. And I think if you're first learning, I would just the flies that you fish with and then learn how to tie them very well. I think in my mind, I could pick a dozen flies that I would use every single year, and I'd take on every single trip, and I'd focus on those. And like one of the what was his name? One of the famous fly tying book authors. I can't remember his name. Oh, A.K. Best. A.K. Best said, "You do not know how to tie a fly until you've tied 100 dozen of that pattern."
Oh, of that pattern.
Of that pattern, yes.
Wow.
I find that to be so true.
How long does it take you to? How long would it take you to tie 100 dozen of that pattern? I wonder.
Well, I've been tying for almost, let's see, how old am I? Almost 40 years now. And I am a typical basic trout fly. Once you get into the mode, into the mindset, you can do a dozen an hour.
Yeah, a dozen an hour. Yep. And so that almost equals. So yeah, I'm bad at math again, but I was thinking of a book. Or God, I think it's the first 20 hours. I'll provide a link to it. But it basically the premise is that you can learn anything. You're not going to be an expert, but you can be a very very good at anything in 20 hours if you put the right amount of focused time into that subject. Yeah. And he shows it in on one of his videos in this book where he learns to play the ukulele in 20 hours. So I guess is that about right for fly tying? If you put 20 dedicated hours into, is that about, I guess, I'm not sure if that's the 100 dozen. I guess it's not, but,
no, I'd say that's about right. I would love to learn to play the bagpipes in 20 hours.
There you go. Well, you got to check out this book then. He'll show you how to do it.
But I think if you want to tie an elk hair caddis or a parachute Adams or a pheasant tail nymph, I think you could be proficient in 20 hours.
Yeah.
Focus 20 hours, yeah.
Okay.
But it's most of the difficult part of fly tying, and a lot of people don't realize this, is preparation. If you set out all your tools, set out all your materials, prep all your materials, get it all laid out, because preparation takes about 10% of the time. Mm-hmm. And so everything is. You don't have to go searching for things. You've got all your hackles pulled out, trimmed, and sorted by size and by color. And then that's when you can really focus and do good work. It's the fly tyer that has to rummage through a shoebox every 5 minutes to find something that's not going to be proficient. But once you get into the production mode, as I call it, that's when you really do quality work. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. I actually have a little online course, right? Basically a beginner course, and that's one of the first things I say is try to find a space. It's not always possible where you live, but if you can kind of set that out so everything's ready, so you don't have to set up your vise and take it down every time, so you can just kind of go there. Even if it's one fly a day, you can just hop down and tie that fly, and it helps you keep going. But those are great tips, Hal. I really appreciate that. I think that's going to help a lot of people. Thinking about the material, the fly material industry, I was just watching something on YouTube. I can't remember who it was, but he basically walked through one of the big companies that has a lot of the necks and things like that. What is your recommendation as far as, do you have a place, like, as far as online? I've had that question a number of times, like where's a good place to go to get materials online? Obviously if there's a local fly shop, that's best, but do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, I'd be very careful there. Obviously I would support your local fly shop first, because not only do you go there to purchase materials, but you go there to get information. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't financially support the fly shops, we'll lose that information. And beyond that, there's a couple major advertisers that I won't mention their names, but where you can buy, for example, you go into a fly shop and you'll see the label. Just those labels, you can usually Google and find it. But I actually buy a fair amount on eBay too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's quite a few tyers that tie for 20 years and decide it's not their thing, and they just sell all their stuff.
Oh, cool. That's a great.
You can do well there. You ask questions before you buy. Make sure they've got a good return policy. Zoom in on the photos of what they're selling, and usually you can do okay. I found hooks on eBay usually sell at the retail price, so you won't find good deals on hooks. But,
no.
And then also be very careful. Make sure the materials you buy are legal materials. Sometimes you'll see things from foreign countries that are not allowed to be imported. We do have some threatened and endangered species in the United States that you cannot buy and sell.
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally you'll see those on eBay. Those need to be, you don't purchase those things because,
Yep.
it's against the law. So be very careful there.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. That's the eBay. That's a good tip. That's definitely a good place to look for stuff. I wanted to check on one thing that's a little bit off topic here. Well, maybe not totally off, but Don at the River City Fly Shop. I'm not sure if I'm going to get him on the show eventually. I know he's not a big online guy sort of thing, but I was wondering if you could talk about maybe just kind of briefly your connection to Don and how that all, because I haven't heard that story from Don.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. When we moved here, Kaufman's was the only fly shop in town, and Kaufman did Randall Kaufman, who's I spent most of my time talking with, and I'd hang out there, and it was a great shop, nice people. They did quite a large catalog sales, and I went into Kaufman's once, and they didn't have the particular feather I was looking for, and one of the desk guys says, "Hey, go check out River City. I think they've got what you're looking for." And I went into River City off of Shoals Ferry Road there in Beaverton, and he had what I needed. And so I went back and forth between River City and Kaufman's. Kaufman's eventually went out of business. I spent more time at River City. And I remember one time I walked in and I needed a new pair of waders, and I walked in and says, "Hey, Don, I've been shopping around, and the waders I wanted were about $150. I says, "Don, have you got any waders about $150? And Don says, "Sure. But you don't have to pay that much. I'll charge you $150, but you don't have to pay that much." And so we kind of hit it off right there. And then Don has probably the widest selection of fly tie materials that I've ever seen in any fly shop. And I travel coast to coast with my job. I never pass a fly shop without stopping in, but Don by far has the biggest variety.
Yeah.
And the reason Don has it is he goes to fly shops that are going out of business and buys all their inventory from around the country and throws them up on his wall. And so he specializes in the odd materials.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you can go into some fly shops and there's, 5 different grizzly saddles to choose from. You go into Don's and he's probably got 30 from very high quality to low quality. He's got the whole range of prices. So I spent a lot of time there, and Don had he's now got me tying custom fly orders for him. And about, I'm going to say 10 years ago, there was a huge interest in Atlantic salmon flies. And so I taught an Atlantic salmon fly course there for Don for, like I say, 10 years. There's been less and less interest in that because everyone that wants to tie them has learned how, taken a class. But that was a lot of fun. We would do a full day Atlantic salmon fly class, and each student would walk out with 2 or 3 Atlantic salmon flies after 8 hours of tying. And so, but Don's been very supportive of the fly clubs and the expo. He has a booth at the expo every year. And so, Don's and he set up a table at the front of the shop just to sit and talk.
Yeah.
And so it's a very welcoming atmosphere. Sometimes you have to bend his arm to get him to go up to the cash register so you can pay for something.
That's right.
But beyond that, it's a friendly place to visit.
Yeah, definitely. I love going into Don's place. That's good. Cool. So, maybe you could talk a little bit about, do you have any mentors that helped you along the way get to, your tying level? It sounds like, if you're doing Atlantic salmon flies, you must be at kind of an upper level. Do you think of any names that helped you get to where you are?
Well, growing up, there's quite a few. I had a high school biology teacher, Art Nelson. Spent a lot of time with him. In Boy Scouts, I had a couple scout leaders that tied. But this was in the 70s. And in the 70s, there weren't hardly any classes. There was no computer, obviously, nothing online. all we had was books. And back then, all we had was Herter's catalog. If your listeners remember Herter's,
yep.
They went out of business 30 years ago. But most of my learning took place from reading books. I got the old Atlantic Salmon books from England from the 1860s, 1870s, the Price Tannett books, and read those and read them and reread them. And that's how I learned to do Atlantic salmon. When I learned to Atlantic, you couldn't find anyone doing them. Guys were doing them, but they were spread out all over the country, all over the world. And it was hard to meet those people. They just, we didn't really have fly tying shows like we have today. And so pretty much self-taught. And now, I still learn new things about Atlantics at the fly shows. And like I say, the expo, there's 24 excellent Atlantic guys. You can sit down there, get some one-on-one attention from them, and they'll show you new techniques. And then even though you're watching them tie, you can share your skills with them while they're tying. And so the learning goes both ways. Atlantics, I just became fascinated with them in the early 90s, and just the colors, and it's almost as much fun just collecting the materials as tying Atlantic. There's such a variety. I don't know if you know the story of Atlantic salmon flies, but
maybe you can give us a quick little summary of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of a history buff too.
Perfect.
But when the British ruled the world, they had the largest navy in the world, obviously, and the sea captains would travel to all the ports and all the continents, and they would be on the ocean for years on end before they came back to England. Well, while the sea captains were visiting all these exotic places, they were collecting fur and feathers for fly tying. And so they'd return to England with, jungle cock from India and red crow from South America and ostrich and peacock and golden pheasant and, from all over the world. And then they'd plop that material down in front of their fly tyer in England and say, tie me the most gaudy, colorful, exotic fly that you can so I can impress my friends. And so most Atlantic salmon flies, if you really get down to the materials, represent almost every continent in the world with a feather or fur.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the sea captains, the tinsel on Atlantic would come from the lapel, from their uniform.
Oh, yeah.
And so they just unravel the tinsel. There's the tinsel. And so the Atlantics really started as a result of the British Navy traveling the world, and then these guys wanted to show off all their treasures from around the world. And so I took that to heart, and I was fascinated by that and started doing the same thing, collecting feathers from all over. And now mostly I tie Atlantic salmon flies for wedding gifts and retirement gifts and Christmas and things like that. But a lot of your heart and soul goes into Atlantic fly because it could take you 2 or 3 hours to tie it, and you can't sell something like that. It's a piece of you, and it's very sentimental. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's that's
how I see it.
Yeah, no, it makes. I think I will get into it more, but I never really got fully into it. I've always been kind of had Jay Nicholas on in episode 3, and he was like, I was kind of asking him about fly tying, and he says nowadays he likes to get those 5-minute find a fly you can tie in 5 minutes, and that's always been kind of my thing too. I'm kind of kind of quick, get it in, get it out. I guess I'm probably more of a fisherman than a flight, if you had to pick one of the things. But yeah, I think I will, just because it's such a unique. I love the history too, and just with everything and spay flies. So no, that's great. That's cool. Really interesting, the whole history there. And of course, everything, it came over here and now we're tying. People are taken it to another level. Do you see that people now, there's like a resurgence, or has it just kind of goes in waves, or there's still plenty of Atlantic salmon tires?
It definitely goes in waves. I think it was more prominent 5 years ago than it is today. I see a lot of people at the expo come and just walk by the Atlantic guys and say, "Oh, I need the basic. I want the fishable flies. I want the
start
flies."
basic." Yep.
But 5 years ago, the Atlantic guys had all the attention. That's where the crowd was. So it comes and goes. I think most people are discouraged to find Atlantics because they can't find the materials.
Oh yeah.
I think there would be much, much more interest if they could get, the swan feathers and that perfect golden pheasant crest, but they just it's difficult to find those.
Yeah, but as you noted, the place up in Washington there, the exotic materials group, that might be one place to start.
Yeah, if you get to know those guys, they'll share their sources with you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Now I also believe that the basic trout fly is very pretty too. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but I think there's beauty in all flies.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I was just thinking of asking you if, talking a little bit about steelhead here. If you had to pick your two, or maybe a couple go-to steelhead flies, which are the first that you pull out of your box?
Well, I'm partial to greenbutt skunk.
Mm-hmm.
It's been around forever. I hate to admit it, but sometimes egg patterns, glow bugs, work really well.
Oh yeah.
There's a fly called the Tyrant that Randall Kaufman came up with. I really like it. It's more of a coho fly, but it's chartreuse, or not chartreuse. What's the color? It's kind of a red pink color.
Okay.
But it's a rabbit strip with a white chenille body with a pink hackle on the front with a cone head.
Okay.
I haven't really got into intruder patterns much. A lot of guys love those.
Yeah.
I tie quite a few of them, but I like more of the smaller classical, the Trey Combs kind of steelhead. I like the hairwing. I like Dave McNeese's patterns a lot, John Shewey's patterns a lot, and I've had the most success with that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the intruder. Yeah, it is a popular. I think the reason that one is so popular is it just provides, well, especially for winter fish. Obviously it provides a ton of movement, but at the same time you don't get a super bulky fly, so you can kind of cast it with with a normal setup. But those are good paths. I'll definitely try to find a link to the Tyrant and add that to the show notes. And
it's an old pattern, yeah. Now the other thing is, I mostly fish the coastal water for steelhead, and so there you got to get down, you got to get deep. You need a very heavy sink tip if you're swinging. Cone heads are the rule there.
Mm-hmm.
Where on the Deschutes you can go a little bit lighter flies. But I think on the Trask and the Wilson, if you're not 4 or 5 feet deep, you're probably not hitting fish in their zone.
Yeah. That is it's always it's a fine line too, because you definitely got to get down, but you don't want to be so deep that you're dragging the bottom and actually below them. But I hear you. You got to be a little bit heavier. Cool. So I was just thinking a little more about the other expos. So you've got this big one that you're basically heading up here. What are there other expos around the country? The other big ones, any names of the where other people, if they're not in the Northwest, where they might find some of these, or are they kind of mostly on the East Coast?
No, we have a really good one in Portland, and I'm also the Fly Tyer chair for that one. It's the Fly Tyers Rendezvous. It's held the first or second week of November every year. We've been doing that one for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
and it's held out at the Armory by the Portland Airport. But if you just do a search for Portland Fly Tyers Rendezvous, you'll find that. At that one, we have 50 to 60 tires. It's just a one-day event.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a group that meets in Ellinsburg, Washington. That's the first part of January,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll get 40, 50 tires there. There's a show in Boise. There's a show in Idaho Falls.
Oh, wow.
There's a show in Salt Lake.
Huh.
Show in Redding.
Yeah. And these are all similar to the show here, similar style.
Oh no, our show is by far the best show.
Yeah, nice.
The other shows are very good too. I shouldn't put them down, but yeah, they're good. But we have 200 tires. They'll have 100 tires. But yeah, pretty much it's a big thing. A lot of tires are liking to get together. Most of the other shows I just mentioned are 10 or 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And now we do have the Federation, the Fly Fishers International
Right.
group. They have an event, what we used to call a conclave, every year. And this year, this August, it's in Boise, Idaho. So anyone with fly tying interest or in the politics of fly tying, they do quite a bit of lobbying there.
Mm-hmm.
To promote fly tying. If you're interested in that, you could come there. There's fly demonstration classes. Usually the Fly Fishers International, they usually meet in Livingston, Montana,
Mm-hmm.
and then every few years they branch out. So this year is in Boise, so that's close to home. So we expect quite a few people from Oregon to attend that.
Okay.
The other big show would be in New Jersey, and I think that's in the spring. And then there's another big show in Denver, Colorado, where they have it's kind of for vendors to show up, where they show off the new gadgets and new tying materials. You need a special invitation to go to that one, but that's an eye opener to go to that one. Most of the fly shop owners attend that one.
Oh, cool.
But then the last thing I would say is every fly club has a fly tying club night a couple times a year. So I would check your local fly clubs too. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, there's definitely some good local groups out there. Do you know if on either at your site or these other expos, if there are much video where people are kind of recording tires and then posting it on the websites at all?
We used to do that at the expo. I think we did about, I'm going to say 15 years of videos where we bring in a dozen of the tires and film them. I think the public broadcasting group out of Salem did that. You can actually buy the videos, the DVDs. There's a link to that on the expo website. But they haven't done those the last few years, mostly because there's so much on YouTube for people to watch and see. We just haven't done those.
Yep.
But it takes a lot of work to do that, and we've just, at the expo, chosen not to continue that.
Sure, yeah. That's YouTube is kind of massive now. It's got everything. So what about talking about the show in the next 20 years, say? I mean, where do you see this thing going? I mean, I think about the Northwest Fly Tyer Expo, but I mean, you also have fly fishing on the end there. I mean, is this something where you want to grow this thing much bigger than it's at? And I think of the Sportsman show this year, how you go over there, and it seems like fly fishing, that section gets smaller and smaller as we go. Do you guys see yourself growing to take up a need for people?
Well, I've seen that at the Portland show. Also, it has diminished the fly tyers groups. I think Don Nilsson may be the only fly shop that goes to the Sportsman show in Portland. What my experience has been is, and I'm sure you've seen this, but when the movie A River Runs Through It came out 20 years ago, the interest in fly times fly fishing just skyrocketed. It was just astronomical. Since then, it's dropped down considerably. We're really trying to get some of the younger people into fly tying and fly fishing. Mm-hmm. But I think we are competing, and I'll just be honest with you, we are competing with computer games and toys and school sports. And so we're competing with a young man or young lady's attention there. And so we are concerned that as the typical age of our tires is getting older, mm-hmm. but we are making a big attempt to bring new people in. We're always looking for new people to volunteer to be on the expo board, mm-hmm. And volunteering their time and their talents to help. I hope we can keep it going for another 10 years, but we're going to need some new people, some energetic people that want to do that. So anyone that's listening to your show, boy, we could sure use your help. And especially if you have, a business background, if you have a background in accounting or marketing or sales, mm-hmm. or websites or personal management, that's what we're looking for to help out, because we don't want to lose the ground that we've made. But I wouldn't say it's a guarantee we'll be around in 10 years. I hope we are. Mm-hmm. But like I say, it all depends on, what enthusiasm we can maintain today.
Yeah, exactly. So how does it, just kind of briefly, how does the whole thing, it gets funded? Is it a nonprofit, or is it, how does the whole thing function now? Do you have to get a certain amount of advertisers in there?
It's a nonprofit, and it's sponsored by the Oregon Council Fly Fishers International. And we've been able to, obviously we have to pay for the buildings and the utilities and security and all the materials it takes to run an expo. And so we have vendors that help pay for that. We have an admission to the expo. I forget the admission price, but it's just a couple dollars mm-hmm. to get in. And so mm-hmm. Every year, the money has not been a problem through our 30-year history. We've always had good vendor support and ticket sales. And so mm-hmm. we're doing good there. We do make a little bit extra money that we can use for scholarships for fishery students. We do have some grants. So if other groups want to do some fishery improvement or education, there is a little bit of money generated from the expo that can be used for those purposes. So
nice.
Pretty good. We've got a pretty good balance of money coming in and how we use that money.
Yeah. No, that's great. So we're getting close to wrapping this up here, Hal. I just had a few more questions for you here. As I've been going here, like I said, this is episode 18. I've been interviewing, I think the last episode I interviewed Scott Mcgarva. We talked about the Dean River. I've talked about the Skeena. I've talked to basically a lot of experts from, kind of all around the Pacific Rim. But we haven't talked about the Trask River yet. That's a kind of a local river, on the North Coast. Maybe you could talk about, it sounds like you've caught a few fish there, a few steelhead. How you catch fish up there? What's the, as far as the any tips or secrets or strategies or how you do it?
Well, a secret's a secret. I like the Trask because it's mostly wild fish over there. You get up to the North and South Fork, there's no hatchery mm-hmm. up there. And so it's native fish. You'll get up there and swing a fly deep. If the water's really high, indicator, nymph, an egg through there. Mm-hmm. I like little tiny glow bugs. I tend to go small.
Yeah.
I'll use
like bead small or more glow bug style.
I'll do 10 or 12 hook small.
Okay. Oh
down there.
Wow. Yeah.
Now I love floating the Trask. You've got to be very careful though. around the peninsula, there's a little waterfall. Pay attention to the put in and takeouts, but it's a great river for pontoon boats.
Yeah,
because pontoons are very forgiving. You can bounce off rocks, but the way to fish the Trask is you put in and you stop at every run. You fish every run thoroughly, and then you float down another 100 yards to the next one. I would fish everything. There's a lot of water that looks like deep, slow salmon holes. You want to stay away from those. You want to fish the top end or the bottom end. But anytime you see a riffle going into a channel or a slot, fish that and fish it hard. I don't think I've ever caught a fish side drifting through the Trask. It's always park and walk on the bank.
Yeah.
The Trask is hard to get to. There's very little access just to park and walk in. And so I find floating it to be a lot of fun. And then when you get down to the tidal influenced part of the Trask, that's great for sea run cutthroats. I love it down there. When the Chinook come in, the sea runs are right behind them, and just fish what I call frog water down there. Occasionally you'll hit a steelhead down there, but most of the steelhead I've caught are in the midsection or way up high on the Trask.
Yeah. And
the other thing with the Trask is I've got one or two spots that I got to hike in a quarter mile through Devil's Claw and just really bad brush, and I fish about a 10-foot section of river, and I can honestly say almost 100% of the time I've hooked a fish there. And so you find that one or two just little pockets that'll always hold a fish. That's how I fish the Trask.
Yeah.
I may spend a day driving and hiking, but I may only spend 2 hours actually fishing. That's what the Trask is like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, no, those are good tips. I think again, I was just mentioning, Scott Mcgarva on the last episode on 17. He talked a lot about, I can't remember his exact quote, but basically, don't wait out, you start in close. I mean, ankle deep and 20 feet, I think it was his quote. They catch a bunch of their fish, we're talking up in BC, but it's no different anywhere else, but a bunch of their fish within 30 feet, and even up into the beach. So I think, I keep reinforcing that, I think, but it's a good point to make that, and I sometimes screwed up. You feel like you want to go out there and do the hero cast as Scott put it, but you really don't have to. Yeah. You need to start in close. So yeah, those are good tips for sure.
Yeah. If you've got a brand new spay rod, go to the Deschutes.
Yeah.
You can cast and swing forever. And that's how you fish the Deschutes. You get to the coastal streams, it's more like fishing pocket water and small slots. So you can fish it with a spay rod or switch rod, but you're better off just traditional one-handed rod, and fishing for accuracy. You got to get that fly right on the fish, and there's fish there.
Yeah, definitely. Good. All right. Let's see here. So I was just going to check to see if, in the next 6 months, if you had wanted to let us know what you have going as far as, it seems like you got, this big expo after this. You pretty much take a break here, or what do you got going?
Well, with my job, I travel coast to coast. This last year, I was able to fish for pike in Vermont, cutthroats in Montana, rainbows in New Mexico, golden trout in Southern California. So I'm just one of those lucky guys that gets to travel and fish everywhere. And I'll do the same thing. My personal goal is to fish 1 day a week. And so I've got approval from my wife. There you go. And my boss. My boss is very supportive also. And so it's take fly rod and vise and travel. I tie flies in motels after work every night. And then, if it's fishing is close to where I'm actually working, I'll, fish after 5 o'clock. So, I've got a bunch of trips lined up, and I'll tell you though, Dave, real quick, something I found a lot of satisfaction from the last 2 years is the Cutt Slam programs. I've received a Cutt Slam certificate in Wyoming, Utah, and I'm halfway through it in Idaho. But basically, if you catch the 4 native cutthroat in the state in their native habitat, the State Fish and Wildlife will send you a certificate showing that you've accomplished that goal. And it is just a lot of fun.
And this is in which state?
Wyoming, Utah, Idaho.
Yeah.
California has one. It's not for cutthroat, it's for all trout. Jola Follett at Royal Treatment Fly Shop has developed he and I got together and developed one. It's called the Oregon Trout Trail. But you can contact Joel, and if you catch 5 of the native trout and steelhead in Oregon, then Joel will give you a certificate and a sticker. And so it's a lot more fun to do that because you're focused on a single fish. You're not after volume of fish or big fish. You just want to catch a fish.
Totally.
And very rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, so you said the Royal Treatment Fly Shop?
Yes, in West Lynn.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll provide a link here in the show notes for that as well. And yeah, I can't remember the name of the guy. I'm sure a lot of people know. There is a guy out there that, I think he's up to like 300 species or something. He's kind of trying to catch every species. I don't know if you remember that guy, but I'll try to remember what his name is and provide a link to that because that's kind of, I guess that's the extreme version. But no, I love that idea of trying to I think the numbers game is a distracting and, sometimes not good as far as the environment too, just trying to get as many fish as possible and taking it back and thinking getting one fish or getting 4 different species is pretty awesome. So I love that.
Yeah. Do your research on that because that's a fantastic experience and you learn more about fisheries there.
Perfect.
The native fish. Yeah.
Good deal. So, Hal, before we let you go, I just wanted to note here and see if we missed anything about the expo or anything else you want to cover here, or do we get it all pretty much ready to go for people that want to make it this year?
I think we're good. It's held the first part of March every year. If you're an expert tyer, beginner tyer, we'll have something there for you to learn. Hang out with some of the best tyers in the country, and it's a lot of fun. Perfect. And if people want to find you, they can just go to northwestexpo.com. That's nwexpo.com, and they can find your contact information there or look you up if they have questions. Yes, I'm on the board, and they have the contact information for every person on the board. So, yeah, I'm open for questions. Send me an email if you need more information. Happy to help. Okay, perfect. Great. Well, I'll leave it at that. And just want to say thanks again for, all the stuff you're doing there. I mean, obviously, I can't remember how many hundreds of all the hours you put into that. But, I appreciate that. And I think a lot of people out there do that come to the show. And, I think, let's keep this thing going. And maybe they can talk to you at the show to find out how they can help and make sure this thing goes for 10 years and longer. And, we'll just go from there. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later. All right. Bye-bye. So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered in today's episode, just go to wetflyswing.com/18. That's the numbers 18. Please go to wetflyswing.com/community to connect with the growing Facebook group at Fly Fisher Society. We are continuing the conversation at the society, so stop in and say hey. Thanks again for stopping by to check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon and maybe even seeing you on the river. Later. Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.